Hello and welcome back. Here we're going to talk about human capital today. In the last one we discussed the civil service and how we hired versus the spoil system and the merit system and the kind of different changes around the civil service. Now we're going to actually talk about the people themselves and what they do and how we grow and maintain and train the important human capital aspects that we have within public administration. So kind of a opening check here, the way that your grandparents or your parents may have had a job in the government, is very different than it is today. Paper files, typewriters, face-to-face everything, and today everything is digital. We have AI assistants, and we meet on Zooms or Microsoft Teams or Google Meet, and who knows what's coming next. And so the challenge is, how do you adapt the workforce while maintaining public service quality? So the focus today is understanding how technology and social change are transforming government work. All right, so let's back up to what is human capital. It's not just human resources, right? Human capital is knowledge, skills, ability, and experience. In public administration, you have a public works manager who has engineering knowledge, budgeting skills, communication abilities, and project management experience. And you can see how, these types of skills, the knowledge, these abilities, and that experience kind of goes into every job. It's not just kind of a single focused individual. And so human capital is really developing that, helping them grow and achieve the goals within their particular position. So change is occurring rapidly, right? Technology changes from things going to completely online versus, a lot of in-person stuff. Meetings, many of those are virtual nowadays. We're using analytics and technology and real-time traffic and real-time crime centers and all sorts of different things, replacing, static reports or the paper file or the paper product. And so a lot of this has led to different expectations from the public on the government. And we want things right away, and we want things transparent, and we want to be able to double check the accountability. And there's also a different focus on values, and these values are different depending on generations. And there's an increased focus on diversity and inclusion. And that's definitely still true at the state and local levels, even though, politics have changed a lot of things going on at the national level. On government jobs, technology is changing things. Some jobs are being eliminated, but new jobs at the same time are being created, especially those in public administration related to data analysis, GIS, cybersecurity, user interface designs, and community engagement coordinators. And some jobs are also being transformed, right? So we're doing things differently. We're using different tools, new technologies. There's a real world impact of the kind of technological revolution. And this, is true both in inspections and permitting, as well as in schools and in human services in a number of different ways. Often there's the cry for more efficient government, right? We talked so many different times about the kind of multiple bottom lines in public service, but one thing that a lot of folks are excited about technology for is the kind of efficiency gains and productivity gains that it does bring. And so there are automation benefits through routine processing, data analysis, communication, and this has really helped with things like 911, scheduling, permit tracking, background checks, etc. So with all of this new technology being rolled out, government at many different levels faces a big challenge. We're trying to recruit people who know how to use this technology and upskill those people who are currently in their positions so that they don't become, in a sense, obsolete, right? And so these shortages in these areas, things that you may want to go into with your job is cybersecurity, data analysis, forensics, and mental health. And so government is trying to recruit and upskill for these types of positions. The difficulty is we can't match the private sector salaries. Your job at Google is going to be paying quite a bit more than it would if you're working in Anaheim, right? But there are the benefits packages and other things. But the nature of public service, it's quite different than the private sector. Work has totally changed too. I think there was this kind of sudden shift right there at COVID, and everything goes online, and there was this huge learning curve that we kind of had to overcome right away. Some better than others, and that changed a lot of things. Some things, I like being in person, honestly. But look, we're doing an online class right now, so there are changes, right? And some have stuck, some have not, and some are permanent. And I think the biggest question is, how do you maintain the service quality? How do I replicate in this online asynchronous class the benefits of an actual classroom and in-person instructions? I'd try my very best. I know the experience is totally different, though, between what happens in a classroom with human-to-human interaction than, being remote like this. So the benefits, though, are cost savings, better work-life balance. You can hire from different areas, and efficiency. The challenges are supervision, security, equity, and the kind of culture, the kind of team and mission-driven focus that comes with being in person and sharing ideas together. All right, so the skills gap, right? So how do we really upskill, train, find people who have the skills to come into these new positions, develop their skills, their knowledge, their abilities, and benefit from experience? And there's a number of different recruitment strategies and a number of different developmental strategies that public administration often adopts, whether it's targeting diverse talent pools, whether it's partnering with universities, or whether it's just training in a number of different ways and development. So here's a few examples for you to read for this approach of training and development. And we can take one from fire and EMS. Traditional approach is academy and then field training, modern additions, community risk reduction, cultural competency, data analysis, and then technological focuses here include mobile terminals, electronic patient care reporting, and then there's ongoing training that needs to occur, kind of, just the continuous training. And this is totally true both within schools, public health, police departments, all over the place, right? So there's kind of the traditional focus, the kind of additions, updates, and then the kind of constant development over time. Some of you may want to kind of get into a leadership position, right? You're in a public administration degree program, and you're learning about management, you're learning about leadership, perhaps, and the leaders need strategic thinking and be able to do kind of the practical aspects of it too. So planning is certainly important. Managing change, managing those organizational challenges that we've talked about already in this course, and then the practical actions, clear communication, resource allocation, rewarding for learning and adapting, and then providing regular feedback. So we have a case study here, right? Managing technological and cultural change and permitting modernization. So you're rolling out a new platform in a city planning department, and you have these certain issues you have to deal with related to human capital, like training, like those who are just stuck in their old paper version. I know, there's stories in universities where professors just quit en masse once the university had to force them to use email. I mean, this was, a couple decades ago, and there was just such a resistance that people decided to retire. The same thing happened at COVID, right? This kind of mass retirement that occurred when people didn't want to shift to virtual or use new technologies. That's the cultural resistance thing. There's also the resource requirements and expectations for evaluation. And so how do you get it done, right? Leadership strategies, involve the staff, good communication, adequate training, right? Make sure that people know what to do. Don't just say do it. And then ongoing support. All right, so we've already introduced the idea of civil service and merit system in one of our last lectures. And so the modern adaptation of some of those things kind of within this human resource idea is skills-based hiring, right? So not just merit, but skills, flexible classifications. So kind of using the civil service kind of a bit more flexibly to put people in positions where they are allowed to, move up in the ranks pretty quick. Incentives for excellent work, and continuous recruitment, always kind of accepting applications and pulling people in rather than just hiring windows, I guess. So new approaches to government work. We've talked about kind of the modern, ideas around the different eras of public administration, and certainly the contract and temporary workers is one of these modern ideas from new public management, and kind of the networked approach of government. And so you have some benefits, but there's also some challenges, of course. And we've talked about some of these a good bit. The challenges are less loyalty, kind of not a public service motivation, potential security concerns. Shared services is another approach. So multiple agencies sharing specialized positions. There's a lot of coordination issues that can occur with that. And you see some examples here with the benefits and risks related to contracted security, or outsource IT. All right, so a real challenge in public service right now is these kind of overlapping generations. The baby boomers are on their way out. They value their positions though, and so they're going to hang on to their job as long as possible. And it's really, when you're hired into a position, you have a lot of public service protection to stay in that job for a very long time. And so these folks are going to be those who need to be upskilled, or they're going to be resisting the technological change. But they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. And that kind of institutional knowledge is what keeps organizations going. The mid-career folks, the Gen X folks, they're kind of bridging the old and new approaches, right? Like me, I was born, totally in an analog world, and then, adapted to a digital world early on. And that's a bridge for these kind of mid-career folks, the Generation X folks, the 50 somethings, I guess. The millennials, they're technology natives, right? They expect everything to be digital. And they really like collaborative approaches, but also like the Gen X folks, they really question traditional authority. And then the Gen Z, probably most of you, mobile first, social media, rapid advancement, diversity, inclusion priorities, right? So all of these things are very challenging because everybody's coming at their position, their job, their workplace, their organization from these different perspectives. This is a lot of fun in some ways, but it's also a really big challenge for human capital management. Okay, another recruitment challenge, or another challenge in public in human capital that I alluded to earlier is really recruitment and retention. We do compete with the private sector and the public service, right? And the process can be slow. It can take a year to hire somebody here at Cal State Fullerton, which is, it's a really slow process. There are kind of sometimes negative perceptions of government work, and outdated qualifications or restrictions. Change is hard, and it's especially hard in public sector. Retention problems also, people, peel off to the private sector all the time because of the slow promotion opportunities, perhaps the frustration with the kind of bureaucratic aspects of it, inadequate tools and support, recognition for poor performance. I think that when you want to come into public service, there's this kind of real idea that you have a public service motivation, right? You kind of know that you're going to get into a situation where, you're not being paid as much as you could be possibly in the private sector. You do have, resource issues. There is frustration with the bureaucracy and how slow moving things can be, but you are there to do good for the public, right? You have this kind of motivation, despite all these challenges. You know that you're doing good service. You know that you're helping somebody at the end of the day. And I think that's what attracts people to public service and what helps us overcome some of these obstacles. That's my opinion, at least. Another kind of key feature of human capital right now is DEI. And so there's certainly a lot of politics around this, and there have been for quite a while, especially over the past couple of years. The volume has been turned all the way up. I will just say that DEI is important because it provides legitimacy. The government reflecting the community it serves. Diverse perspectives improve decision making, hands down. There is science that backs that up. Um, Diverse groups, inclusive groups, are more innovative than other, kind of more homogeneous groups. And communities trust agencies that look like them. One of the largest challenges that we have in public service right now, and government generally, is the low level of trust that the public has in us. And so if we look like the public, that trust is increased. There is science that backs that as well. And so you can see a number of different public service applications of this. To me, it's important. There is a challenge of balancing the diversity goals with kind of the merit principles, and I think that's where a lot of people get stuck on when it comes to the politics around this. But you can't beat the science of what leads to good decisions, what leads to more effective, lean, well-run organizations. All right. Switching to kind of performance management. This is making sure that people are doing their job and doing it well, and how do we actually measure that? Traditional approach is kind of standardized forms and annual performance reviews and rule compliance. Modern approach is constant feedback, goal-based evaluations, feedback from multiple sources, and development planning. So for career planning, individual growth, I think that works really well. In reality, there's a blend of all of this, right? We have annual performance reviews basically around here, or at least every couple years. And there's a lot of focus on rule compliance, and we have a lot of standardized forms, but the rest of the stuff, the kind of goals and the input from multiple sources, that rings true. And so like a lot of things, like the areas of public administration, performance management, it's kind of a blend of all of this. All right, training challenges, technology. It's just everything's new every single day, it seems, in a number of different ways. Or the technology is just advancing so fast that it's hard to really keep up with it. And so that's a big challenge for not only the private sector, public sector absolutely as well. What's coming next? AI integration. This is already here in a number of different ways. Governments around the country, around the globe, have begun using AI, either agentic AI or large language models to produce reports or to do analyses. And that's being used all the time in crime and other data heavy areas. It's certainly being used, and it's very, very beneficial, but at the same time, it has a number of different challenges. Find me if you want to talk more about that, because I could spend the entire day, and I've written about it extensively. So flexible work arrangements, and then this kind of culture of continuous learning. So what you need going into this world, your human capital development for your own self, are tech skills, soft skills, and leadership skills. Tech skills, you pick up, you learn what you learn. You can get a lot of that training on the job. Leadership skills, there's a number of different theories about leaders. I think we get a lot of that stuff from on-the-job training. Some of that is from our cultural experiences. Some of that is kind of, seeking out ways to grow yourself. The one thing that I always find the most important, and when I talk to managers out there, city managers and other public agency officials, they want the soft skills. They say we can train leadership, we can train tech skills, we can train a lot of things. We want people to be comfortable with change. I want them to be able to work with diverse communities, engage in critical thinking, and be able to collaborate. So a lot of the stuff that you may learn in some of your humanities classes, your literature classes, and your languages classes, and your history, and some of the kind of liberal arts types courses that you're taking, learn that stuff. Those are the soft skills. This is how we understand the world. Read novels. This is where we develop these soft skills of empathy, of understanding people, and being able to engage comfortably with them. That's the real skill. That's how you get the job. So there's certainly another case study here that you can take time to pause and read through here. Some questions that you can think about right here that you can take time to pause and think about. And, the summary of what we just covered. But I'll stop there because I think this one has been long. Thanks for sticking through it, and I'll see you for the next one.